What's up, y'all? Focus Daily TV back for another episode. As usual, hit that like button, subscribe, support the channel, hashtag Focus Daily TV. Today, we're going to go more in depth into this Federal Reserve System and how exactly it operates. As I've been speaking on previous videos, due to us depending on the federal government, which was enacted, and the Federal Reserve, rather than depending on the Father, God, and his laws and his commandments, we found ourselves as bondsmen and bondswomen, as spoken about in Deuteronomy. And we're going to watch another film about the Federal Reserve from their perspective and see if we can get any information on the truth behind the deception of fiat money and Federal Reserve currency. As usual, put your discernment caps on as this journey begins. Let's go.
The Federal Reserve Bank has found itself at the center of attention in recent months. What with everything from money printer memes to the future of capitalism as we know on the line, the Fed has obviously been an incredibly influential entity. But it's also something that most people really don't know much about. Or worse, think they know a lot about when they really don't. But that's okay, because the Federal Reserve Bank is a bank. So the best way to get a really good understanding of how it works is to
A bank, a money changer, a tax collector, as it is spoken about in the Bible.
just follow the money and answer a simple question. Is the Reserve Bank profitable? Now, because I hate YouTube videos that needlessly drag out a question to get their average watch time up, the short answer is yes, massively profitable. It's actually the most profitable organization in the world after recently beating out Saudi Aramco. But don't click away just yet. For starters, I need that average watch time too. But more importantly, finding out how money works to generate massive profits at the Federal Reserve Bank will teach you a lot about how this almost mythical institution actually operates day to day. So, the core responsibility of the Reserve Bank is not to generate profits for its shareholders like it is any other bank out there, or any other company for that matter. Instead, the Reserve Bank has two primary goals.
My duty is one that Congress has given us, which is to use our tools to achieve maximum employment and stable prices.
Now, around 1920 to the 1930s, a Holocaust began to take full effect. During previous years and decades, actual murders took place. The foreigners, once they invaded this land, they went out on Lewis and Clark expeditions, which actually were military campaigns designed to found little pocketed communities that they had not yet discovered, and to uncover the resources that were available all across this land. Now, in 1930, a bankruptcy was declared. Wall Street crashed, which was actually a strategic crashing of the system, which allowed the setup of this Federal Reserve and allowed the people to be sucked into bondsman and bondswoman status.
The first and most important goal is to maintain the value of the currency that they represent, or put another way, control inflation. The second goal is to maintain a healthy level of economic growth and employment, but curiously enough, this cannot come at the expense of the first goal.
Now, these so-called goals are their talking points, which they present to the public as a cover-up for the massive crime that is really occurring.
A year where the US economy grew by 50%, but prices also rose by 50%, would be seen as a failure in the eyes of the Reserve Bank, although this is of course a very extreme example. However, this does not mean that the US Federal Reserve does not have shareholders. In fact, it doesn't even mean that it is one single entity.
All nations conspired against thee, as it speaks of in Psalms. The Federal Reserve is a banking system which all nations take part in. not just America.
The U.S. Federal Reserve Bank is actually an organization of 12 banks spread across the U.S. It was set up like this because, back in 1913, banking was done primarily with paper notes and paper records. So, having a central bank geographically close to those different regions was crucial in allowing them to swiftly carry out their operations when required. It was also politically popular to have a series of central banks that would each individually be compassionate to the needs and requirements of their own individual region of the economy.
We're just going to call these banks companies, corporations, corporate entities. And it was these corporations and corporate entities that placed us into the matrix, the world of Oz, deeply embedded us into the world of sin.
Now, as for the shareholders, who are they? Well, they were the regular old banks. If you want to start a bank in the United States to loan money and take deposits, you actually need to be a shareholder in the Federal Reserve Bank. Individual banks need to maintain a share ownership equal to 6% of the total amount of money that they raise from shareholders. This might sound like a weird rule, but there is a reason it is done. There are basically 3 ways that banks can raise money. They can take deposits, they can borrow, or they can sell shares. Those first 2 options come directly under the control of the Federal Reserve through...
See, right now, at the moment, we're just exploring their explanations of these systems, and we're weighing them against the information that I've been presenting for the last year about reclassification, debt slavery, and being sunken into this world of sin through registration, birth certificates, social security numbers, and things of that nature.
Through interest rate changes, but selling shares is not directly impacted.
SIN numbers, SSN numbers, the world of sin.
By these rates because shares are not an interest-bearing asset. You don't get 5% interest paid out on Apple shares. You get market returns, whatever they may be. Positive, negative,
sideways, or in f***ing circles.
By mandating ownership of shares equal to a portion of a bank's paid-in contributions, the Reserve Bank knows that the participating institutions will always have skin in the interest game. What's weird about these shares, though, is that they always pay out 6% of their value every year, which is...
It's really important that us as men understand this system and understand the law, whether it be admiralty or the laws of the land. The law must be understood so that moving forward, we realize the importance of following the laws and commandments of the Father versus the other one.
It's interesting for 2 reasons. The first is that this is a fantastic guaranteed rate of return, especially in a world where similar guaranteed investments are paying less than 1%. Many have lamented that this is basically a subsidy paid by the American taxpayer and paid to big banks, which is not entirely unfair. The second reason this is interesting is because this will be paid out whether or not...
Now, they're speaking in code. So when you hear taxpayer, that is the bondsman and bondswoman that are bonded to this financial system and placed in debt slavery that left us cursed when we came in and cursed when we go out. However, here on Focus Daily TV, we bring in this truth so that you may receive a chance for redemption. The truth must be heard before the redemption occurs, though. We must face the situation that we find ourselves in as a people. I say we, because I speak of African Americans as a whole, but me, I've been freed from this system, and I'm being sent here to awaken other people so that they may be free. A fisherman of men.
Or not the Fed makes a profit or not, which is not how normal dividends work. So, in a way, these shares in the Federal Reserve Bank kind of blur the line between a typical company stock and fixed interest bonds. Either way, this still doesn't explain how the Federal Reserve Bank turns a profit.
All right, here we go.
My phone, my wallet, passport.
YouTube.
Unfortunately, it's not as simple as what the money printer memes might have you believe. You see, the Federal Reserve Bank doesn't just create money to use on whatever they please. They instead carefully purchase select assets like government bonds and mortgage-backed securities with the money they create.
they secure the ownership of the government, if you're listening carefully. The Federal Reserve runs more of the government than the actual political figures that they parade and puppeteer in front of us.
They're also somewhat limited with who they can purchase off with this newly created cash. For example,
these are the big guys, the guys that are really in trouble, the guys that are really slated for destruction.
The Treasury Department of the United States issued trillions of dollars worth of government bonds in order to finance the stimulus spending in 2020. Unfortunately, the Fed could not buy these bonds directly. Instead, these get purchased by private parties. This could be anybody from mere mortals like you or I, but more often than not, it is large financial.
It's a very elaborate system. That's why it's important that we receive their point of view, so their point of view can be broken down and weighed against this truth. And the truth will always come out on top. Hit that like button, subscribe, support the channel, #Focus Daily TV. Let's continue.
Institutions like banks. Banks love government bonds because they can use them as part of their reserve requirements while still earning interest on them. Not much interest, mind you, but it's better than the 0% they would get holding onto pure cash reserves. Now, if there is ever a situation where either the banks or the government needs a lot of cash, the Reserve Bank is ready to step in. In 2020, the Fed purchased trillions of dollars worth of these bonds from banks, so that those banks could in turn go out and purchase more bonds from the Treasury without the price of those bonds being too heavily impacted. Now, as we have noted, the return on those bonds were not huge, most of them still being under 1%. But 1% of trillions of dollars is still a lot of money, especially when these bonds are being paid for with money that was created for free. Assuming a simple 1% return on investment, the $4.8 trillion worth of US Treasuries currently held by the Fed would...
See, now we're starting to get an understanding of how they capitalize off these birth certificates, these social security numbers, or in Canada, SIN numbers, SIN numbers, and how we were bought, but we didn't sell ourselves. We sold, let me see, how could I put this? As the Bible says in Deuteronomy, you will sell yourselves, but nobody will buy you. That's what I'm trying to put across. We were sold into a debt slavery system controlled by these Federal Reserve entities. But yet, history tells us we were slaves from Africa and this one and that one. But in actuality, nobody actually bought us in that manner. We placed ourselves into the world of sin through not following the laws and commandments of the Father.
Would return $48 billion in profit per year. When you consider that the Fed also owns $3 trillion worth of private sector securities like mortgage bonds, this annual profit figure balloons to well over $80 billion annually, based off even the most conservative projections. What's more is that this isn't even the end of the story. Everything that we've looked at so far is known as open market operations, meaning the Fed is buying assets off the open market. Go figure. But there is an additional revenue source that doesn't attract nearly as much attention. That is, well, closed market operations. You see, the Federal Reserve Bank is a bank
behind the doors.
Bank for banks. They offer deposit facilities, loans, transfer capabilities, and even cash distributions. Now,
if you're listening closely, you'll notice that they're the head central bank, and there's banks under them that control and distribute that debt. So, being that this is a capitalist society and currency is our major form of exchange, they control all currency. And they collect that debt, that bond that was placed upon the people's soul once they mama signed that birth certificate.
Like every other bank ever, the Fed charges fees for all of these services, and you can actually find a breakdown of these charges on their website. Not that they would ever really matter to you individually. Even still, this is not a small operation, and these services bring in billions of dollars every year. Collectively, the Reserve Bank brought in a net profit of over $90 billion in 2020 from open and closed market activities, which technically makes it the most profitable organization in the world.
And the thing is, being the true owners of this continent, being that this continent is the black man's birthright from God, they should be paying those tithes to us. Rather, they're placing them within a trust and they're capitalizing off the interest. Unbeknownst to us, all of this money they speak of is actually our money. We're already rich. The Bible talks about when Moses left Egypt and the Pharaoh set them free, the people began to just hand over their gold and riches to the freed Israel. Think about that one.
The world by some margin. So you might ask, how is this fair? The Reserve Bank gets to create money from nothing to buy up debts and then makes massive profits on those debt returns. Why are they allowed to do this? And even further from that, if they create all this money into existence and then demand interest on the money they create, won't we all eventually be in debt to the Fed? Well, not really.
All right. The tinfoil section, huh? Those people who speak the truth about what's really occurring. But here we go. Another episode of Focus Daily TV has come to an end. Hit that like button, subscribe. See y'all later.